citizens will not be encouraged to cash out of the system. They can keep transacting within the system on the two networks. So if you walk into a store that has orange money and you are carrying an MTN money, you are able to transact on an orange money platform. So we've engaged with the MNOs and they have assured us that before the end of the first half of this year, we should be able to achieve that bilateral integration. Holistically, once we have the deployment of the national electronic payment switch, that will also then bring on board all of the fintech companies that are operating within the mobile money space. And then we'll introduce measures that can limit the amount of currency in circulation and currency outside of banks. That is what our target is, to reduce the currency outside of banks and bring money back into the banking system, and that people can operate electronically to be able to keep the line. And so we have an objective for what we're doing. We also, there's a huge cost to the central bank in terms of printing notes. So we think that if we have a digital economy, that can reduce the cost of printing notes. It doesn't negate the fact that we will still have to print, but at least when we print, the life of the currency is prolonged beyond the 3 years period that we have now. So that is our objective in the medium term as we go through our strategic plan. Slide 8, in terms of trade deficit, the trade deficit decreased. What we saw an increase in input or export receipts as compared to a decrease in import payments. So our trade deficit actually decreased during the period under review. We also saw a depreciation of Liberian currency, especially appreciation of Liberian currency close to the end of the year. But for early 2025, we've seen a further depreciation of the Liberian currency. And we're watching those developments very keenly to be able to address that situation. Honorable Senators, at the end of 2024, our gross international reserves recorded an increase of 7.2%, largely due to inflows declining to about 423 million between the period August to December 2024. Again, we have a graphical depiction of movements in remittances. So we initially indicated to you the growth projection for 2025, which will be a shutdown of usage and the support that they do provide. And so we'll be watching those developments very, very closely to see how they impact our growth projection for 2025. In terms of inflation, even though we reported that inflation in January rose to a double digit, our intent is to keep inflation within a single digit in 2025. So we will continue to put in place all of those measures that can help us to achieve our target of a single digit inflation rate for the year 2025. In terms of the financial market operations, we were able to add about 35.53 million to our net international reserves, which grew from 199 million in July to 234.53 at the end of December, which by which we were able to exceed our IMF target in terms of the NRR. So in terms of measures that we are putting in place, we're able to upgrade our Depot X, also that allows for money market operations. So we're able to upgrade the system, and it went live in November of 2023. And also in helping us to target inflation, we've also introduced two instruments recently that will allow commercial banks to invest their excess reserves into overnight placement with the Central Bank of Liberia. We think that by doing that, that will help us to control the amount of currency in circulation and by extension, the high exchange rate and inflation. Also, senators, we are looking at intervention within the pension sector. We do know that NASCAR is providing pension. We are looking at other markets wherein there is a private pension scheme. So we've engaged with African Development Bank, and they are not working with us. They provided us a grant of $400,000 to undertake a study that will advise us on the introduction of a private pension scheme in Liberia. So the Ministry of Finance, who represents Liberia, have already signed, and the central bank will be the implementer of this debt program. So we are now moving into the procurement activities to get an expert who will conduct all of the studies that will advise our next action working with the AFDB. In terms of the financial sector, honorable senators, the sector is expanding, but the challenge that we face in the sector is in the high ratio of NPLs. It is still a challenge for us. Currently, there are 9 commercial banks operating within our financial system, 3 deposit-taking microfinance institutions, 12 rural community finance institutions. We have the fintech sector that is also growing. And we are having a lot of interest that has been. In terms of foreign bureaus, foreign exchange bureau, the number increased from 211 to 264, and then money remittance entities increased from 53 to 61. The CBL issued 2 final licenses and 5 provisional licenses to non-bank financial microfinance entities. So looking at the financial soundness indicators, we will look at the NPL ratio, liquidity ratio, and the capital adequacy ratio. Like we indicated, in terms of the NPL, that is where our concern is. And like we always say, we will look to you to help us with laws that are protecting the space here, and also work with judicial authorities to be able to introduce measures that will help us to reduce the NPL ratio. We at the central bank have also put in place some measure to address this. What we are currently doing is that we are considering the introduction of a collateral registry system that allows for the registration of non-movable assets. What we currently have only allows for the registration of movable assets, and we think that, and so that property is encumbered by Bank A. And so once there's an attempt to assign that same property to Bank B, that commercial bank will then know that this property is already encumbered, and so they will not be able to take it as security for the next facility. In terms of liquidity ratio, liquidity remains strong in the market, and the capital adequacy ratio is also strong above the threshold that we have. Honorable Senators, we have before you the BFIA, which aims to strengthen the independence of the central bank, and by extension will allow the central bank to be able to intervene in the sector if there is an issue with a particular commercial bank. So we have that, and we're craving your indulgence for the passage of that act. What the act will also help us achieve is the setup of a deposit insurance fund through the deposit insurance scheme. So what that will address is that if the commercial bank has an issue, instead of coming to the central bank, they will go to the deposit insurance fund. Initially, it will cover lower level depositors within the commercial banking system. But as we implement the deposit insurance scheme and the fund begins to grow, then we'll begin to adjust the level of depositors that can be covered on the deposit insurance fund. So we crave your indulgence for the passage of that act so that we can begin work on setting up the deposit insurance fund as contained in the act. Honorable Senators, we also did an amendment concerning the agent banking. We worked with the IFC and we're able to amend the regulation. So the agent banking regulation that was amended allows for a tiered approach to agent banks or bank agents within the market. Initially, the focus was on the commercial banks as super agents. And then for the commercial banks to onboard some agents was requiring a lot. And so the IFC said to achieve financial inclusion, we should revisit the regulation and adjust it in a way that the act or the regulation accommodate lower level agents that can be supervised by the commercial banks, and we've been able to achieve that. Honorable Senators, during the period under review, the Central Bank concluded on-site examination of 3 banks, namely EcoBank Liberia, UBA, and SIB Bank. And the examination of Bloom Bank is currently ongoing. The draft report is already ready. That has been reviewed. And we're hoping that before the end of the first quarter, we can have the final report. Also, in keeping with our regulation, our supervision and regulation department did 2 presentations to the boards of 2 of the commercial banks whose reports were ready. And then we also participated in the banking colleges of EcoBank, Liberia, and African First Bank. We also participated in the College of Supervisors of the ones for both banking, insurance, and the non-bank sectors. In terms of other developments in the sector, we conducted a study tour in Kenya and Cote d'Ivoire to gain a better understanding of the mobile money operations. We see the effect of mobile money operations principally in Kenya using M-Pesa. And so we are trying to learn from their experiences to see how that can also work here. But we indicated early on, part of that exercise is driving our push for interoperability and integration between the 2 MNOs so that our citizens don't have to carry 2 phones with them to conduct mobile money transactions. So those territories are actually advancing our negotiations or our discussion with the 2 MNOs. So currently we haven't come up with a regulation that will push them to integrate. What we have adopted is a bilateral approach. We engage with them individually and brought the 2 MNOs together, and we asked them to do a bilateral integration so that it is the constraint that our people face in doing their mobile money transactions. Honorable Senators, currently the Central Bank of Liberia is benefiting under the LIFT project. And 2 components under the LIFT project that the Central Bank is benefiting from the National Electronic Payment Switch project, which has an implementation date of in December 2026, and the Credit Reference Bureau. So those projects are currently ongoing, and the timelines for full implementation is December 2026. Because of the urgency, we approached the World Bank and AFDB to see the possibility of adjusting the timeline for the implementation. They've accepted our proposal to them, and they promised that they will review our suggestion to them, and they will get back to us to see whether that is doable. In terms of the insurance sector, currently we have 15 insurance companies and 7 brokerage firms. Honorable Senators, as you may be aware, under the amended and restated Act of 2020, you extended the timeline for the Central Bank to transition the insurance department into a commission by an additional 5 years, and that 5 years come to an end this year. So there have been substantial work that has been done with the insurance sector. Currently, we have drafted the Act for the Insurance Commission. We have that the validation workshop is coming up on March 5th to the 7th. And Honorable Chair, we've invited yourself to participate in that validation workshop that comes up on the 5th of March. And once it is validated by all parties, including the Law Reform Commission, then we will then submit the Act to yourselves through the executive for enactment. And that would then enable us to transition the insurance department into a commission that can oversee the insurance sector of Liberia. Just in terms of the operational efficiency of the central bank, again, this is not something that we are proud of, but we have to take some measures in place to reduce the staffing level of the central bank. We took over early on in September. We were able to work with 209 contract staff that had overstayed the contract period. And so we had a program, we put in place a program through which we severed relationship, but we severed the relationship in a very, very honorable and respectful manner with them, such that there were no backlashes. In fact, we got commendation in terms of how the separation process was executed by the Central Bank of Liberia. So in light of that, and in light of the issues that arose out of the compliance review of the Central Bank of Liberia by the General Auditing Commission, we have also put measures in place. We reconstituted our procurement committee. We have now a draft of the new procurement policy, which will be hopefully be approved by the board during this next sitting. And so we put in place measures that address a number of the concerns raised in the GAC compliance review of the central bank. So principally there were 48 issues that were raised and 21 findings, which total 117 other recommendations. As at end October, we had fully resolved 47% of all of the issues were fully resolved, and we have other issues that are ongoing currently. So by the time we complete our annual report to you, we should be able to give you an update of how. But the intent is that by end of 2025, we should have resolved almost 100% of all of the issues that have been raised by the GAC. Honorable Senators, in keeping with the mandate to implement the currency changeover as approved by the 54th Legislature, we are happy to report that all of the banknotes that were approved have been printed and delivered in country. So today, as of today, we have received the full complement of the banknotes that were approved for printing, the 47 billion in notes and the 1.6 billion in coins have now been received. Along on in August, also the central bank undertook the importation of $12 billion in mint, but that was again an export of mutilated notes that we undertook during the same period. And those 20 million in mints were received. So we have an arrangement with the Bank of Ghana. We know that there was some confusion as it relates to that process, but that is a process that we normally do conduct, working in partnership with the Bank of Ghana to help us with the export of US dollar mutilated notes and the importation of mints to supply those on the leopard market. So one of the policy measures that we took, we put in place immediately we took over also is the over-the-counter check encashment policy that we took. And this is directed to all ministries, agencies of government. We've been able to reduce that threshold as agreed between the central bank and the Ministry of Finance to $25,000 and then to $5,000 for payment to individuals. So if you're an individual and you receive a payment over $5,000, you will be asked to deposit that amount into your bank account instead of cashing that amount. If a ministry, agency, or commission of government issues a check, they will have, and it's above $25,000, they will have to go through a banking process. So that's one of the enhancements that we've made to the operations of of the central bank. In terms of the suspense account of the central bank of the Ministry of the Government, we have signed a 7th level agreement which clearly define the services that we provide to the government and also the mode of operating that particular account. That has been fully signed between ourselves and the Ministry of Finance. Honorable Senators, when we got in during the first 5 days of assuming authority of the central bank, we encountered a fraud situation involving almost $961,000. We were able to arrest that situation promptly. Neither the central bank nor the government of Liberia suffered any losses. We were able to conduct an investigation involving the Liberia National Police, and those who were charged by the police have been sent or have been charged, and they are going through the prosecution by the court system. So some of the issues that we also encountered when we took over at the central bank was the deterioration in many of the ICT components of the bank. So currently we will have to upgrade the core banking software, and we think that the attempted fraud was perpetrated because many of the controls that were in the core banking system have already failed. And so lower level staff were able to go into the system and breach the controls that were set. And that was principally due to not upgrading the software. So what we've done is we've taken it upon ourselves to upgrade the software this year. So the process has begun, and the cost of doing that is a little over $4 million in terms of upgrading our core banking software. Also, the staff were lacking in severe ICT equipment. When we went in, this was the complaints we had was the staff did not even have tools to work with. They didn't have computers, printers were lacking. And so what we did, Honorable Senators, we were able to find money outside of our budget, and we went into a procurement process that was transparent, and we put in place, we were able to identify a vendor, and that vendor has started to deliver. The computers have arrived, and we are in the process now of distributing those computers to the relevant staff that need those computers. So in terms of operational efficiency, what we're doing with many of our procurement processes is that they are going through this procurement process, which is in line with the PPCC Act. What we've done is that we've drafted a procurement policy that closely aligns with the PPCC regulation. That's what we've done as a bank. And so that is what we are following. We note that in the GAC report, there is an indication of the central bank not complying with the PPCC Act. But again, we will have to defer to our lawyers and then to yourself to advise us in terms of the central bank adherence to the PPCC Act. Our defense has been that the Central Bank of Liberia does not receive budgetary support. The Central Bank generates its own revenue, and that's the revenue that it uses to fund almost all of its activities. And so there is not a compelling need for us to be compliant with the PPCC Act, since we do not benefit from funding. We are not covered within the budget that all of you do approve annually for the Liberian government. Honorable Senators, so we've also put measures in place by which we can reduce the budget deficit of the central bank. That has been a concern. We know that senators have raised the concern over time in terms of the budget deficit that the central bank continues to report. We're pleased to note that even though in 2024 we had a deficit, but that deficit, if we're able to extract the monetary policy cost out of that operation, the Central Bank of Liberia actually met its budget target and exceeded it. So it means that we actually operated at a profit as a central bank. But because of monetary policy costs, and that is the cost that the central bank actually assumed in order to address the rate of inflation or high exchange rate in the market. So that is a cost that is outside of our core operational function. So we were able to narrow that deficit, even considering the monetary policy cost. And what we intend to do going forward is to continue to narrow that cost so that by 2027, 2028, we are able to even absorb the monetary policy costs into our operational revenue that it can be covered, so we don't have a budget deficit. So we are putting in place all of the measures that can help us to achieve that objective. On the defaulted staff loan, Honorable Senators, we've been able to address that situation holistically. We take some of the blame of ourselves in terms of how we manage the staff loan policy at the bank, but we've been able to put all of the measures in place that we can assure you that you would no longer see this issue arise again. We have now policies in place that will guide the staff loan policy, and the issue of staff loan defaults will be addressed quickly as soon as possible when we have a default situation. Again, to the currency change over project, as was approved, Honorable Senators, again, we just want to reiterate that the entire amount of $48.734 billion has now been fully received by the Central Bank of Liberia. What we began saying is that even because the process started in 2021, so we have now begun to see mutilated notes coming in from the new batch of printed notes. So we are looking at that situation, and we ask our team to begin the process by which we can come back to yourselves for authorization to print notes to replace those mutilated notes. And so we'll be coming to you subsequently to seek your approval once we have all of the statistics available to us. So on other matters, Honorable Senators, there were some decisions that were taken by the Central Bank of Liberia Board of Governors. But because of all of the issues that arose as a result of those decisions, working with our partners, there was a need to conduct a legal review of the actions taken by the Central Bank of Liberia. So a law firm was hired to conduct the review. We have a report that has been made available, and we are going through that report to see how we can address some of the findings that were and recommendations that were contained in that particular report. Some aspect of those recommendations, we are now seeking an opinion from the Justice Ministry in terms of how the Central Bank can implement those recommendations. So major decisions that were taken by the board during the period under review included the amended regulation on agent banking, the collateral eligibility framework. So this is basically for commercial banks coming in to borrow money from the central bank. So what we've done in this framework is to improve on the conditions that have to be met by commercial banks that will benefit from loans, short-term loans from the central bank, because the ELA framework is actually a short-term facility as contained in the Act. So what we saw was that there was a violation on the part of the central bank in terms of how long facilities were granted and remain uncollateralized. So we've gone in and reviewed that framework, and that framework has been amended. Also, review the reserves management framework, and we'll be able to come out with a policy again that help us in managing our foreign reserves. So we have two frameworks. We have a policy, investment policy that was approved, and then we have the risk management framework also that help us to protect the central bank against all risks associated with managing our reserves. So currently we're working on the payment system. And we're trying to improve upon that. The World Bank is providing us support. So we initially indicated by 2026, we should have a robust payment system in place that will incorporate and address all of the commercial banks. Because what we have currently as a payment system does not incorporate all of the banks. So you will know that if, for instance, you have an ATM card, issued by EcoBank, that ATM card cannot be used on an ATM for UBA except it is an international card, like a MasterCard or a Visa card. So what the new payment system, National Electronic Payment Switch will address is that we'll have even a local card that can be used across the entire network of 9 banks that have ATMs in the country. So on the new payment system, if you have an ATM card issued you by EcoBank, that card can be used on any platform, on any bank platform. That's what we're trying to achieve under the new electronic payment switch that we are working on to support our reserves. Those interactions with the IMF in addressing all of the concerns that were raised led to the ECF program that we have currently. We also participated at the AU level that saw the establishment of the creation of the African Monetary Institute. And this will lead to the creation of the African Central Bank. So also, in order to achieve that, ECOWAS, we initially have to have a unified central bank, one central bank, and then we can then adopt one single currency. So those discussions are ongoing. The timeline for the introduction of the single currency within the ECOWAS zone is 2027. So those discussions are ongoing. In fact, a convergence meeting is being held in Abuja next week to discuss all of the criteria that has to be met by ECOWAS member countries for us to be able to move towards a single currency. So in terms of Liberia, before we can accede to the single currency, we have to address the dual currency situation that we currently have in place in Liberia. And like I indicated, we can have those discussions so that we can advise on what we think can happen before we move to a full de-dollarization. Our position is that the de-dollarization effort in Liberia has to be a process and it cannot be an event. We have to take into consideration all of the fundamentals of the economy that have to be achieved before we can move to full de-dollarization. For instance, we have our productive capacity has to be enhanced so that in terms of our export, we can increase our exports to be able to attract foreign currency. So that when you de-dollarize and the economy is fully Liberian dollars, you have reserves that can support your input activities. So we can have those discussions and we can then try to advise and we can work on the roadmap because there has to be a roadmap drawn that addresses all of the issues that need to be addressed before we move into full de-dollarization. Even though there is a limited de-dollarization exercise that is ongoing now, but we want to advise so that we can expand it and we'll do it gradually to be able to achieve that without much impact on our local economy. Also, during those participations, we were able to participate in, and not only did we participate, we also lobbied with our colleagues. And one of our own, the former finance minister, Goma Kamara, was vetted and was selected to head the West African Monetary Agency. And so now he has assumed that role and is stationed in Freetown, Sierra Leone. Honorable Senators, as we come to the end, we indicated we are now working on a 5-year strategic plan. And in doing that, the major thrust of that plan will be a digitalization of the economy. So we're going to enhance all of our operations, make sure that all of our operations are digitized totally. And then once we are able to achieve that, along with the deployment of the National Electronic Payment Suite, then we can onboard all of the commercial bank and the fintech players. But also in doing that, Honorable Senators, we will have to come back to you on an amendment of the Act. We know that the Act was amended in 2020, but we still see the need to amend the Act. There are recommendations that came out of the legal review. And then also we are reviewing the Act. Also, there are certain components of the Act that we have to come back to you with suggestions in terms of amending that Act. We also have care centers across that we've started. We have care center in Banga and in Monrovia, and we just completed one in River G that we want to operationalize. But again, we are doing it very, very carefully, because if we want to move towards a digital economy, then of course the brick and mortar wouldn't work. And we've seen that with the commercial banks, wherein commercial banks are now beginning to deploy agents, so they are now moving into locations themselves to put our mud and bricks and mortar. So the central bank cannot be left far behind while we are investing in bricks and mortar. So we are looking at a digital economy so that it reduces our dependency on bricks and mortar. Howbeit, we still have to be in certain locations to provide support. And so we'll continue to review that, and where there is a need, we will actually move in. One of the areas we look at is the hub in Lofa, which we're told that it's in a bad shape. So we are planning on upgrading that hub. Since it's already there and it's operationalized, we have to upgrade it to bring it to some level of modernization. So, Honorable Senators, we've addressed a number of the issues. We're now following a standard recruitment policy, because that was one of the issues that we were faced with when we had to do away with over 209 persons, which was a situation that we didn't like, but we had to do it in order for us to meet up with the demands of our external partners. So what we're now doing is that in terms of recruitment, we're following the policy that is transparent. So what we're doing currently is that we have a staff needs assessment that has been done. And once we have that report, we identify gaps and we identify the skill sets that are needed to fill those areas. There is still a need to bring on board staff, because there are departments that are asking for staff. But we want to do it in a way that we can get all of the critical staff in those areas with the requisite skills that can be able to contribute, and we get value for money. So the last thing that we are looking at, Honorable Senator, before I close, is the enhancement of our reserves. And what we are looking at is gold. And the gold is covered within the Act, but we have not taken advantage of that. So what we've started doing is we've started engaging with all of our strategic partners in Liberia. We've had meetings with the Ministry of Finance, we've had meetings with the Ministry of Lands and Mines, with the NIC, so that we can all begin to study this concept of gold reserve. We see it happening in our neighboring countries. So again, Liberia cannot be left too far behind. So we are also now even planning a study tour. Probably go to Ghana to see what procedures they had to go through in order for them to make a final determination of using gold as reserve. So when our first thought process is that if we move into the creation of gold as reserve, we want to target the artisanal miners. In place all of the measures so when we buy the gold from these artisanal miners, and then we can work with the refineries to put them into gold bars that we can then use as store in our vaults as reserves. As you'll be aware, the price of gold has always adjusted upwards. We have never seen a decrease, or in recent times seen a decrease in gold price. So we think that and we'll take questions from you, and I have my two able deputies here, so questions will be answered by either of them. Thank you.
Thank you. So, distinguished colleagues from the Senate, distinguished senators, you heard it for yourself. And you also have a backup document in the form of briefing. So there's a need to get clarification or post direct question. We can do that swiftly in the interest of time. As I know that most of you are either person for a out of town, constituency. So we start with you in fact.
Yeah, because I have distance to travel. Which
So, John, thank you. Thank you very much for the briefing. And I think with this type of briefing, you will be ahead of the work of the Senate. Because within your reports alone give us a clear picture of where you met the event, what is happening, and then your plan. And also thank you for making this disclosure in your report about the criminal activity that took place and the swift action taken. I have only one concern, and that is page 5, because I'm part of a Senate committee to engage institutions benefiting from UC interventions in the country. And what can be done when the UC has withdrawn completely? On page 5, I see the suspension of UC through UC program. And then you mention that on page 5. Can you please elaborate what kind of assistance that you say bringing or giving to the central bank? What is in terms of monetary value? When this intervention is started, what will be the impact? What can government do?
Thank you, Senator. So directly for the central bank does not receive direct support from USAID. But the institutions that we regulate, the commercial banks, do assist with the implementation of USAID projects. So that, from what with our interaction with the commercial bank, that is now impacting them. Because beneficiaries of USAID funded projects went in there to seek pre-financing from the commercial banks. And with the suspension of the USAID program to Liberia, that is having a direct impact on the commercial banks in terms of how do they recover from facilities they have granted. So for us, by extension, we see that as affecting the central bank, because if the sector that we support or we regulate is affected, by extension, it does affect us. So we see that indirect effect on us. Now, also in light of the recent actions, and specifically to the UC, even though we were not getting direct support from UC, but we were getting an indirect support from the US Treasury. And by this action, that support also has stopped. That support was not in terms of monetary value, but it was in terms of capacity building and helping us, especially with the insurance sector. So we benefited significantly with their technical support in helping the central bank to be able to transition the insurance department into a commission. So that support effective immediately has stopped. And so whatever work that we're doing now is basically the central bank based on our expertise that we have to be able to work with the insurance department to transition it. But there is no direct support from USAID to the central bank, but it's indirect through the US Treasury.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. You are detail oriented, and I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you very much, and I know very well that you have a serious team with you. The two gentlemen are sitting, I know them very well, and their abilities. Last week, I was in front of camera, right here, fighting, telling them, and praying to them the importance of our resources being exploited. That's the political side. And you're not a politician, so I don't want to drag you into that. But how you come in is, I just heard you backing what I was telling plenary. I want to explain to the Liberian people, that's my only question, Chairman. What will their own deposit do for the central bank in strengthening our currency? Can you talk to the little market woman that's selling or they're planting so she can really understand the importance of having our gold being used to back our currency?
Thank you, Senator. So, along with currencies around the world, backed by the resources of the country. And many countries use gold to support their currency. In Liberia, because of the dual currency system and the dependency of the country on the US dollar, we have not been able to harness our gold reserves or mineral reserves. We want to focus on gold, principally because we think that if we focus on gold, we're able to build reserves that can help us in addressing the fluctuation in the interest rate or in the exchange rate. What do we mean by that? So if we have a surplus gold reserve, we can do away with the initial dependency, the local economy. We can move towards the Liberian dollar. We can de-dollarize the economy fully. And if there is a need for US dollars to support the import of the country, because our country is still import dependent, the central bank will have sufficient resources to intervene in the market in terms of providing foreign exchange at a rate that is not too exorbitant to lead to the increase in prices. That can be the central bank's own intervention mechanism. As you may be aware, there were times when the central bank intervened by way of conducting an auction to support importers, providing US dollars at a rate that was lower than the market rate. So if we have a huge gold reserve and there is a need to intervene in the FX market to support import, we can intervene, we can dispose of our gold, get foreign exchange, use the foreign exchange to intervene in the market in the way that the cost of buying foreign exchange is lower and it can address the stability in the prices. We will sell the foreign exchange at the rate that importers can get it, import goods, and then they don't have to increase their prices so much that will become a burden to our citizens. Currently, importers are going onto the local market to source foreign exchange. And if they get the foreign exchange at a higher rate, of course, when they import their goods, they have to factor that into the prices. And that's the reason why we are seeing an increase in prices. So we think that if we can adapt this as a government decision to intervene and we accumulate gold reserve, when the need exists, we can use those gold reserves to be able to intervene in the market and be able to reduce prices and reduce the hardship to our citizens.
I think just to support the government on the basis of simplicity, when we look at the price of gold around 2006, it was around 15,000 to 19,000 per kg. Around 2024, the price of gold per kg is around 60,000, 65,000 to 80,000 per kg. So you can see that there's more than 200% increase in the price. Fundamentally, that means if you were to hold 1 kg of gold in 2006, just in the vault of the CBO, at around 15 to 19,000, today that 1 kg will cost around 60 to 80,000 United States. So that means for every $1 you bring in the economy, you have a backing in terms of the accretion in the interest rate of gold. So that's why I explained. For the layman sense of understanding, it means that if you have $1 Liberian in the economy, it means you have almost about 20,000 United States dollars gold backing that $1 Liberian, so you have less reason to worry about your currency depreciating. Just to support the government, that means your gold reserve can also be used as a collateral to secure foreign currency in order to back the domestic currency if there's any fluctuation in the domestic currency. So that is the thing.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Governor, and the team for the presentation. It's clear. I have a few questions. It's good to see that there's stability in the economy overall after the election. We know that the projected growth in 2024 was around 5.1% when the budget came to us. But then I think you're projecting it to grow at around 4.8% in your presentation. And then in 2025, we expect it to be 5.6, correct? So there may have been things that happened in 2024 that caused us not to meet the 5.1% growth target. Do you foresee any risks to the 5.6% projected growth that we should be aware of? And how can this committee support the CDL to put in place measures to mitigate that?
Yes, Senator, we do see a risk in achieving our growth target for 2025. The suspension of USAID support is one of those risks that we see as a risk to achieve the growth rate for 2025. However, if Liberia as a country and us as a government can begin to look at some of our concessions, the mineral development agreements that we do have, revisit them for amendments, I think we will be able to close that gap. Now, the suspension of USAID is affected, is fiscal authorities, they can speak to that more than us, the monetary authorities. But one of the things that we are beginning to look at the central bank, and we'll be needing your support, is also looking at the export proceeds repatriation regime. If we look at that, you as senators can look at that, and we're able to repatriate all export proceeds before they are taken back out. I think that will help us, because when the proceeds come in to the country, before they are remitted back out of the country, the local economy stands to benefit for the period that they are held by the local economy, the commercial banks. Also, We may need to look at some sort of surrender scheme, export proceeds surrender scheme, a percentage of those export proceeds. But I think we can begin to look at threats of the export proceeds being repatriated fully. I think that can help, and then we can go on to the surrender scheme that was in effect before. I think that would be able to help us, because if we have a surrender scheme wherein the government is able to generate sufficient, the depreciation of our local currency can be supported by the FX that we have to be able to intervene into the economy. So I think, look, just reviewing some of these MDAs that we have, and the concessions that we have, and looking at the repatriation of export proceeds, I think will be able to help us in addressing some of these gaps that we stand to experience as a result of the abrupt shutdown of all of this USAID that's coming to the country. And then, of course, when these funds do come in, like I said, the period that it takes before they are repatriated out, we can use it for other sectors of the economy, such as agriculture. Agriculture is the, I look at agriculture as the engine of growth of the country. We can invest into agriculture, but investing in agriculture means that you need to have sufficient reserves to be able to pour those reserves into the agriculture sector. So that's one area that we'll be looking up to you to help.
Thank you, Governor. I want to commend you on your UN Central Bank on the aggressive contractionary monetary policy that has come to be the last way to stabilize the rate. Inflation is also in a good spot, even though it can be lower. But all of these policies, the target of all of these policies are the consumer, the citizen, people out there. So we didn't hear you say much about prices, how all of this is affecting prices, which is where those who elected us to be here can feel the impact of their policy. Can you talk to us a little bit about price stability as a result of these good policies? Right.
Well, thank you. I think the goal,
especially in the context of we are an import-intensive economy.
Yes, I think the governor just explained about the dynamics in of prices in the economy. The central bank has a part to play, but it also has external player involved in terms of how we collaborate in order to support prices. We're taking our monetary policy decision to tighten and to ensure that we'll be able to sort of sterilize more Liberia, or to make it very simple, so that we'll be able to attract more domestic currency for us. And I'm listening to this
out there. This is the
broadcast, right?
Yes,
when you say sterilize,
that's why I try to bring in the context that the audience will be able to understand, so that we'll be able to attract more domestic currency, and then be able to slightly weaken spending with the aims of managing the rate at which Liberia is spending the economy to be able to contain inflation, because we understand that our core mandate is to ensure that we keep inflation low. So what has happened is that from the beginning of the year in 2024, we saw inflation was around 10.1, around 10%. And so we thought that was high. And so what we did was that we kept our monetary policy rate in a range that would be able to attract more domestic currency in the banking sector. So what we saw was that from February running all the way up to December 2024, we saw inflation in single digit. Now, how has it impacted a local economic agent us in the public? I think it's impacted in the sense that we kept the exchange rate very stable for a sustained period.
What is it now? What is the official exchange rate?
As of yesterday, it was around 197. 197.
To $1.
Yeah, to $1. I can't really, but that is within our threshold range. When you look at our threshold, we try to keep the exchange rate variation around plus or minus 10. So our whole monetary policy strategy is that it shouldn't.
So that would look like in monetary terms, what is the fluctuation rate? Range.
Is around plus 10 and minus 10.
So maybe at 197 now plus 10 would be.
No. That we look at the depreciation with respect to the previous period.
Okay.
So we do the analysis to see the variation rate. That variation rate should not exceed plus 10, and it should not, fall below minus 10.
Minus 10.
That is the thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know. Wow. I mean, this is something, but I want to ask you, Mr. Governor, directly. Are our banks healthy?
Yes, Senator, to a large extent, the banks are healthy.
In a recent IMF staff report, when we visited with you guys, they did flag 3 main banks. We talk about them here. Our own bank, LBTI, is struggling, and 2 other commercial banks. Do you assure us that our bank, LBTI, is not going to go under?
So, Senator, okay, so what we are conducting an exercise with LBDI right now that will advise us to say whether LBDI is going down or it's not going down. So we have an international audit firm that is in LBDI right now trying to do an audit, and based on the findings of that audit, we'll be able to tell you exactly the position of LBDI. So similarly, the 2 small banks will also have international audit firms that are examining them now. We've gone in, as a central bank, we review them, we have our own findings, but we decided to go to the next layer to have an international auditing firm that goes into these banks and be able to review them and give us the findings that will advise us on the next steps and the health of these 3 banks.
I think that's to support the government here against that. That to support the government is that over the last 2-3 months, none of the 3 banks has reported any overdraft. There has been no overdraft in any of the 3 banks just to support the government. I think the entire idea is to actually understand the nature of the problem that we put central bank in a position to be able to respond. That's what the government was indicating. But the reality is that no bank has overdraft. And so we somehow relatively comfortable. Even for the annual report, we saw the average capital in the banking sector was around 27 million. The average capital in the banking sector was around 27 million. And the capital level in the banking sector should be 10 million. So 27 million should tell that we're relatively comfortable. That could be
I mean, for all of the 9 banks.
On the average.
On the
That's the average capital.
And to meet that meeting.
Okay.
So only 1 bank is not yet meeting the $10 billion.
Now, what if they don't, Mr. Governor?
So if they're done, then we will have to, take the necessary regulatory actions. We're giving them, it's a dispensation that was granted to them based on the mode by which they enter the market. And so we have a plan with them to fully capitalize the bank. And so we have up to mid-year for them to achieve that. And that's when the dispensation period comes to an end. Beyond that, if they don't meet that condition, then of course the central bank will have to move in.
Okay.
But in terms of liquidity, if consistently maintain liquidity in the system, they do not have liquidity challenges as of now. So in terms of their balances at the central bank, the current accounts are all positive. All of the commercial banks currently all have positive balances with the central bank.
Let me ask you in a simple English, maybe before I ask the last question. If there was a crisis today somewhere in the world affecting our main staple, right? and some of our main inputs. Is the CDL in the position to work with the Ministry of Finance to make sure that we have food?
Yes, Senator, I will report it to you. As of December, we exceeded our NRR type in terms of the reserves. So if there is an acute problem wherein the government needs some help, the central bank is able to come in to provide support to the government to address that particular situation. Our amount of input cover as at end December was about 2.8. The target is 3.33, and we're at 2.8. So what we're trying to do as a central bank is to achieve that target in the very short run. The medium term is if we can do 5 months of input cover in terms of building our reserve to be able to accommodate 5 months of input cover. That is our medium term strategy as a central bank working with our fiscal police. But as of now, if there's an very acute situation that the government needed to intervene, the central bank is in a position to work with the Ministry of Finance to address that situation.
Sorry. Your NRR grew by 35.5 million or something. Do you care to share with us the source of that? How you were able to grow that? And then the next question linked to that, I think you may have. Do you have enough USD in the economy?
Chairman, to a point, we have one problem, and we should take into account that is what
I think the public needs to know if there's enough money in the economy.
Yeah,
this is public information.
So some of the information we can call them into our.
I mean, is this closed session?
No, it's not closed.
But it's something unique.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So now if we need them,
Yeah,
we can
I
get
I
them
understand the need for us to
into
go,
our closed session. No, not
Yeah.
to go anywhere.
Yeah, let's just
What I'm
ask,
saying,
do you have enough US dollars? Do you have enough US dollars to serve this economy for 2025?
Okay, that is fair.
Yes.
Fix the goal and other things in the future. But for now, that's what happens. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just take a few shots and then we can wrap up. Let me start with the insurance issue you started with. Now, the insurance commission issue, the purpose of taking the insurance to the central bank by Madam Ellen Johnson Sirleaf on her administration was to give them more accuracy and value. Now, over the years, what's our major progress? You can remember one day when Majors looked at me, he was saying, the purpose of the insurance coming to central bank is not for us to go buy it. We take the insurance sticker and decide what type of car it should be. But the policy that will guide it into profitability, for example, insurance claims from insurance company. What policy do we have in place to ensure that when people who are paying their premium, when they make claim to the company, the claim is ready to be paid? Have we progressed on that?
I think, yes, bro. I think I was not around when the policy was done, but I read the document when the central bank was given the responsibility to reform the insurance sector with the aims of transitioning into an insurance commission. That was around 2010 to 2012. I remember Senator Duncan was there. The underlying reason for that was that the central had multiple problems. And then the reality that central bank has worked over time to implement some reforms in the sector. And in fact, around that time there were 8 insurance companies. Today we have 15 insurance companies operating with multiple brokerage firms. So to be honest, to tell you that there's no problem in the sector, there's still problem in the sector. The fundamental reason for the problem in the sector is that you have heterogeneous oversight. You have oversight by the central bank, you have oversight by the Ministry of Transport. Even the law itself give oversight responsibility to NICO. So how do you address the multiple oversight in different institutions? And then we talk about having an efficient insurance industry. It's a problem. So that is the underpinning for central bank, moving fast, ensuring that we have this insurance commission, and we create a unified regulatory body so that all of this problem we have in the sectors regarding heterogeneous oversight can be resolved. I think this is the idea. There's still a problem of claims. There's still a problem about insurance company operating where premiums are being paid and no premiums are used for administrative purposes. There's still a problem of capitalization in the insurance industry. But the central bank owner, the current executive owner, believe that if this sector is not regulated by a unified regulatory body, there will still be problem. You will not have the kind of desirable outcome that you envisage to have. You see, you can't have the sector being regulated by transport ministry. You have some of the regulation with NICO, then you have some of the sector with central bank. If there's a problem in the sector, who take responsibility? So this is the issue. That's why we're saying, can we have a insurance commission so that all of those different oversight within the different institutions now, through a legislative empowerment, can be given to one unified body called insurance commission? I think that's the thinking. But there's still a problem. There's still a problem in the sector. And we believe if you have the insurance commission fully supported, where you have a unified regulation, unified regulatory body, some of these sectors could be minimized and that the sector can be more efficient. You had the same problem with the central bank when they were national bank. There were multiple bank failure when they were national bank. It's not a national bank were weak, but because you had legislation that didn't give the central bank certain level of authority to implement some power in managing the financial sector. But under the central bank, you haven't had any bank failure to the bank, based on my knowledge, from 1999, 2000 to now, you haven't had several bank failure compared to that. So it's the same problem you have with the insurance sector. Because of all of these different lapses in the sector you have, central bank currently has 5 6 insurance companies. 5 6 insurance companies because of several problems, several regulatory lapses they have. And then the insurance company will take the central bank to court, and then you find said insurance company taking another insurance company to court, and at the end of the day, it becomes central bank problem. So I think this is the thinking. There's still a problem, but we believe with the establishment of the insurance commission, it will create more conditions for the sector to be efficient and more effective to address some of these problems in the sector.
So, Senator, just to add to what the Deputy Governor said, we have had significant technical assistance working with the insurance department to be able to set up, upgrading their skills in terms of how they regulate the insurance sector. And I think to a large extent, we've been able to achieve a lot. The problems still do exist, but at least we have policies and regulations in place. We've been, imposing penalties on non-compliant insurance companies. We've seen some of them. I was just told yesterday by our external lawyer, in fact, we're able to get a court action now to put at least 4 of them into receivership because those insurance companies were non-compliant with a number of the regulations. One of the challenge areas that we have right now is in terms of capitalization. And we've had meetings with them, calling the insurance companies and told them we need to address all of your issues and you need to give us a timeline how you intend to address these issues. So even though we're beginning the process now of transitioning them under the commission, we're still working with them between now and the end of the year to address a number of those lapses. So we've taken some real strong action to make sure that these insurance companies are come up with all of the regulations that can govern them. And like you said, if you have regulatory rules shared between different organizations, it becomes really difficult. If you centralize it, then it's much more easier. But if the central bank takes an action today and the Ministry of Transport is not in line with that, we cannot achieve it. I mean, there was a complaint that the insurance companies brought up to me in terms of the issuance of So we will begin to see some good behavior among the insurance companies also.
Yeah, I would like to take this under advisement because the intention of Madam Ellen Johnson at the time, they saw the central bank as a mechanic to fix an old car, to get it, or even kill on the road. So as you're trying to prepare for transition, I would like to take this under advisement as you don't, do that. Let me ask one small question. People are concerned about the absence of a clear-cut agriculture bank. Okay, some studies were done before, but again, the chairman for agriculture committee in the Senate that's got a left. Okay, they are discussing about agriculture bank. So I don't know whether it's something that in your strategic plan you can consider. In the short term, I will lay it down the advisement also.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
So one of the very plan, we really don't have the establishment of an agricultural bank as one of our core objectives, but in all of our discussions with investor partners, we have actually encouraged them to look at the agriculture sector because we know that there is a gap that needs to be filled within the agricultural sector. So every time we have an opportunity to interact with potential investors within the banking space, we are encouraging them to take a look at the agriculture and the housing sector. So we do take that under advisement.
Okay, the next concern I have is the explanation you made, very eloquent and detailed on the de-dollarization process. I know this has been an ongoing debate for a long time now. Do we have some roadmap in place that can show the seriousness of the country in that direction? Do we have some roadmap?
As a central bank, we have a zero draft that we are working on now, and then we can share with all of the stakeholders. So we have a zero draft of that, but we think that we would need to engage with other experts also that can look at the zero draft that we have for the digitalization of our roadmap. Yes, but we do have a zero draft that is not yet ready for sharing with yourself because we need input into that from experts.
Okay, finally, let me just say, you raised a concern about public procurement, PPCC regulation or law. What you are doing, what you suggested you are doing is a good thing. That giving it the level of your autonomy, because the state bank was created as a peculiar animal to just be there by yourself, floating and doing good. So whatever you put in place, you can share with the state in terms of your policy for in-house procurement that almost like a side by side with the PPCC, in close share with the PPCC. Because one thing I've always said, as one of those who participated in the PPCC draft, is the source of your funds determine your procurement better. If you have money from World Bank to do a procurement, you follow the World Bank procurement method. If the government gives you money to print currency, you will follow that procedure. So that's just all I'm trying to say to you. The source of your revenue or your funds determine the procurement methods. You can ask the World Bank. Thank you. So basically, any other question about it? Do you have any additional comment you want to make before we close?
Thank you to the Honorable Senate for giving us this opportunity to appear before you, to give you updates on where the central bank is and where the central bank intends to go in the next 5 years. And we commit that we will continue to give you these updates periodically. Thank you.
Thank you.
You don't have any more? Okay, let me turn the central bank. This is our first encounter for the year. Even we are at. We hope that next time it can be better. We can have more discussion. But we are grateful that we could meet up with the schedule. Today's the last month of February, and the law said February. So we'll try to make it schedule and on time. I want to say thank you. Any other information we want to get or you have, feel free to let us know. Others are on the report for this session. Thank you. Sajia, huh?
Yes, sir.
Please lay your way first.
Yeah, fine.
You will now discharge our witnesses